it is a major anniversary with regard to Richard Nixon and Watergate, several of them happening throughout this week. The CIA spying on Congress thing that has Dianne Feinstein so upset, turns out that was not the first. That happened back during the Nixon era as well. And Lamar Waldron, the author of several books, including the updated trade paperback edition of Watergate, The Hidden History, Nixon, the Mafia, and the CIA, is on the line with us. Lamar, welcome back.
Great to be with you, Tom.
And I should say the website is over at facebook.com, hidden-history. Do I have that right?
Well, if they look hard, they can find it somewhere on Facebook as Hidden History. That's correct.
Yeah, okay. So let's begin with this contemporary. The CIA is spying on Congress. It was spying on the Congressional Committee that was, looking to see whether the CIA was involved in illegal torture. How and why is the CIA spying on members of Congress not unique to this era?
Well, I mean, it was just so shocking when we heard about that the CIA was going in, I believe, looking at the computers that the congressional staff and investigators were using, and that's a really intrusive thing for the CIA to be doing. We should remember the CIA is not really supposed to be operating in the United States. National security threats in the United States are supposed to be under the FBI and other national security type organizations, Homeland Security, not the CIA, which was supposed to be dealing with foreign threats. So, but it was just so shocking because it brought back to me, and probably even to you, some memories from what had happened back in the late 1970s to several congressional committees, starting during Watergate, but especially in the late 1970s. In 1978, 1979, when there was a congressional committee, the last big investigation of the decade, called the House Select Committee on Assassinations. And you remember...
79, this would have been during the Carter administration.
Right. It started 78, went into 79. Under the Carter administration, the CIA director at that time was Stansfield Turner, who took over from good old George Bush, who'd been under Gerald Ford. But it's important to note, before we go into this, I don't believe for a moment that Jimmy Carter or Stansfield Turner, his CIA director, authorized the operations I'm about to tell you about, because they're just two incredible operations. I firmly believe that, presidents come and go. CIA directors are largely a political office. They come and go. But you have these high-level career CIA guys who have been in for 20 or 25 years. They have things to hide. They're there, regardless of who's president or who's CIA director. So I would be very certain that they misrepresented things to their superiors, including Stansfield Turner, and if it got that high, Jimmy Carter. And we'll even talk about in a minute, why they did that. So here's what happened. So you had these congressional investigators, including our old good friend Gaten Fonzie, were looking into all sorts of things related to JFK's assassination and the CIA, because, of course, CIA assets and agents had surfaced as suspects. So one night, a congressional staffer who had authorization was looking at the autopsy photographs of JFK's murder, and she closed the safe. She put them back in the safe. Went away. When she came back, so she put these photos in the safe in a nice book, to protect them. Closed the safe but didn't lock it because she was coming back soon. When she came back, she noticed the book was there, the autopsy photographs was there, but one in particular was on top of the notebook. It wasn't in the notebook where she had put it. So she immediately called an alert, talked to the director of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, the noted attorney G. Robert Blakey, who had been a Mafia prosecutor for Robert Kennedy. And Blakey called the FBI in to see who had gone into the House Select Committee's safe and looked at this JFK material without authorization while the staffer was out of the room. Somebody had been clearly looking and then was surprised when she came back so quickly, so they had time to put the notebook back in, but not time to put that photograph in the notebook. Well, they found fingerprints on that photograph, and you'll never guess who those fingerprints belonged to. They belonged to the CIA's security representative, who was charged with helping this congressional committee get important information from the CIA.
Which is essentially the exact same thing that happened with Dianne Feinstein. The CIA folks who were tasked with handing off to Congress all the information it needed were the ones who were spying on Congress.
Exactly right. And believe it or not, it gets worse. And we can see, by the way, when the CIA gets away with things back in 1978 and 1979, of course, they're going to keep doing them 10, 20, 30 years later. So they're just going to keep doing what works. So the FBI found out it was this guy, Regis Blahut was his name. He denied it, of course. They polygraphed him 3 times. He failed 3 polygraph tests, according to Gate and Fonzie. And then he finally admitted he had gone in there. He never explained why, except that he was, I believe, curious. Which is, you don't break security rules and spy on Congress because you're curious, you're following orders. The CIA fired him, but not his supervisor. They didn't go up the chain of command. So the committee never really found out what the incident was about. The CIA apologized and said, look, we'll do better. We'll assign you a new guy to act as our representative. He's so good, we're going to call him out of retirement, and he'll help you get what you need from the CIA because, as Congressional Investigator Fonzie and the director, G. Robert Blakey, later said, the CIA had really been difficult about giving them important material. So, but they had a new representative now who wasn't going to rifle the safe. Well, it gets ridiculous. So the CIA the House Select Committee had been looking for one particular CIA officer who had dealt with a Cuban exile group that had a lot of contact with Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald, the chief suspect, in the summer of 1963. And the CIA was saying, well, we just can't find the CIA officer you want to talk to. We don't know where he is. But here's this new guy, your new liaison. He's going to help you find that CIA officer, and he's going to help you get all these files you've been wanting, but we haven't quite been able to find. Well, I almost don't have to tell you what happened with the CIA officer the committee was looking for. The CIA actually made their new liaison with the congressional committee the CIA officer the committee wanted to interview, but they didn't tell the committee that. So all the time, Blakey and Gate and Fonzie and all the congressional staffers and the members of Congress are saying to the CIA representative, help us find this guy who was with the who directed the Cuban Exile Organization with all this Oswald contact. Help us find this guy. And they're telling that to the guy himself, who was the guy who directed that Cuban Exile Organization, but they didn't know that. And so they were just completely deceived, and that lasted until the end of the committee, which is why there's one reason there's still so much controversy about the JFK assassination today, because the CIA didn't give about 1 million records they should have to the committee, and they appointed this guy who should have been put under oath and question because the committee wanted to interrogate him. They made him the liaison, all without telling the committee what his real background was. So we can see how when the CIA gets away with that, all those years ago when they deceived not just Congress, but I'm certain they deceived President Carter and CIA Director Stansfield Turner. It was about the number 3 guy in the CIA, a guy by the name of Ted Shackley, was the guy who probably was behind all of this, because Carter had nothing to hide. Stansfield Turner had nothing to hide. Ted Shackley had been the head of the huge Miami CIA station back in the early 60s. The CIA had...
Back when Traficante was running out of there.
Right. In other words, he was actually working on those plots that Richard Nixon...
More with Lamar Waldron right after this. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Lamar's new book, Watergate, The Hidden History, Nixon, the Mafia, and the CIA. Welcome back. Lamar Waldron still with us. You're still here, Lamar?
Right, still here, Tom.
So, you were going to say?
I was going to say, it's so ironic. Now, what we know now, and it's really described in Watergate, The Hidden History for the first time, is exactly what the CIA was so desperate to hide from Congress that they would stage a burglary. You know, they would burglarize the safe of a congressional committee, and oddly enough, it was to hide the true information about another burglary, which everyone's familiar with, the Watergate burglary. And how that Watergate burglary in 1972, you know, is connected to that burglary of Congress in the late 70s and the ongoing deception of Congress. Remember, the CIA has never come clean about putting making their new liaison after the burglary, the very suspect the House Committee wanted. They never admitted that, and in fact, they deceived another committee created by Congress, the Assassination Records Review Board, in the 90s about that. It was only a Washington Post reporter by the name of Jefferson Morley who discovered that deception and has had a lawsuit going, I believe, for maybe 8 or 10 years now, trying to get the CIA to at least come clean about that guy. And the CIA won't even do that. And so the CIA has basically been hiding information, well, since the Warren Commission, certainly, but they hid important information about Nixon and the Mafia and the CIA from the Senate Watergate Committee, the Committee of Frank Church in the mid-1970s, the Church Committee that had the Mafia witnesses who got murdered right out from under the committee, from Jimmy Hoffa to Sam Giancana to Johnny Roselli, and then the House Select Committee, and then the CIA deceived the Assassination Records Review Board created by Congress in the 90s, and the CIA still refuses to release these files. So it's probably now time to tell people, so what was this big secret, that they were all keeping about Nixon and the Mafia? And that was very simply that in 1960, when Richard Nixon, the vice president for 8 years, was running against Senator John F. Kennedy, Nixon didn't have the money that John F. Kennedy had. Kennedy's father was one of the richest men in America. He didn't have any labor support, really, from the major unions, but he did have the Mafia. So Richard Nixon, in the summer of 1960, a few months before the election, ordered the CIA to hire the Mafia, specifically these mobsters like Tampa, Miami Godfather Santo Trafficante and Johnny Roselli, the Chicago Mafia's man in Las Vegas and Hollywood. Nixon had the CIA hire those mobsters to assassinate Fidel Castro before the election. But there's more. At the same time, Nixon also got, and this is verified by the Justice Department, Time Magazine, a lot of credible sources, a new PBS special that's running right now, in fact, Nixon, from these same Mafia guys, he got $1 million bribe to stall some charges against Jimmy Hoffa.
This is the Sun Valley land deal.
Exactly. And so, because the Kennedys had helped to bring attention to Jimmy Hoffa's ties with the Mafia. So it was a package deal for Nixon. You get the CIA to hire these mobsters to kill Fidel before the election so that people will go with the experienced vice president. And you get $1 million for your campaign from those same mobsters. So that
hang on just a second, Lamar. We'll continue this in just a moment. We're talking with Lamar Waldron. His new book, Watergate, The Hidden History, Nixon, the Mafia, and the CIA. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Lamar Waldron has a new book out, or it's out now in paperback, I believe. Watergate, The Hidden History, Nixon, the Mafia, and the CIA. Do I have that right, Lamar?
That's correct.
And just to summarize what you just said, we started out talking about the CIA spying on Congress and breaking into the safe, and then putting the guy that Congress was looking for, the Gate and Fonzie's committee, the Senate, the House Select Committee on Assassinations. They were kind of, and which concluded, by the way, that JFK was killed as a result of a conspiracy.
And not just any conspiracy, but they said that Santo Trafficante and also Carlos Marcello, who was also in on those CIA Mafia plots and that Nixon bribe, that they had the, quote, motive, means, and opportunity to have assassinated JFK. They could not conclusively pin it on Trafficante and Marcello. They did conclude it was a conspiracy, because the CIA, as well as the FBI, but especially the CIA, withheld so much information from the House Select.
Right. So in '78, when they withheld that, when they broke into the files of the Select Committee, they were doing so because they were trying to hide something that they did in '72, which was their involvement with Watergate, and that was because they were trying to hide something that they did in 1960, which was Richard Nixon was mobbed up, and he ordered the CIA to hire the mob, and then the CIA gave a bunch of money to the mob. The mob then gave $1 million bribe to Nixon to get Jimmy Hoffa out of jail, basically.
Well, to keep him from going to jail.
Keep him from going to jail, yeah. And with the Sun Valley land deal, and so we're kind of back at the beginning. I mean, this is.
Right. But let's jump ahead to 71 and 72, because that was in the past, and I think you might agree, Tom. A lot of Nixon's supporters. You remember how conservative and law and order he was back.
I should just say for our younger listeners and viewers, in 1960, Richard Nixon was not only running against Jack Kennedy for the presidency of the United States, he was the vice president and had been for 8 years under Eisenhower.
Exactly. And the only real area of foreign policy Nixon was allowed to really be involved with was Cuba, because Eisenhower did not want to touch Cuba, and Nixon had long ties to Cuba, both through the Mafia and through private business deals with his best friend and business partner, Bebe Rebozo. So I kind of was happy to leave Cuba. Nixon's good friend, the dictator Batista, had been overthrown by Fidel Castro, who had not yet declared himself a communist. And so Cuba was in a lot of turmoil. The Mafia wasn't happy about having their casinos first closed, then reopened. They were reopened. The Cuban government put a soldier of fortune by the name of Frank Fiorini in charge as the liaison between Fidel's government and the mobsters who were still running the casinos even though they did not own them. So the mobsters seemed the ideal choice by the CIA to basically try to kill Fidel and to get the blame for it. Right. But of course the Mafia was not successful in killing Fidel Castro because they didn't want to take the blame. The Mafia knew if they took the blame for killing Fidel, no way they would get to keep running their casinos anyway. So Fidel was not killed. Hoffa, the charges were stalled, but then they were reinstated after Nixon lost the election. But let's flash ahead to 1971. Nixon is president because he kind of committed treason when he stonewalled he threw a monkey wrench into the peace negotiations that Lyndon Johnson had to end the war in Vietnam in '68. So Nixon became president, and Jack Anderson, who was, you remember when he was a very well-known columnist in America?
He used to he wrote a weekly column for Parade magazine that everybody read. And he was America's most famous investigative reporter. He was Woodward and Bernstein before Woodward and Bernstein came along.
That's exactly right. And in January of '71, Watergate, the last Watergate burglary, was June of '72. So more than a year before Watergate, Jack Anderson wrote a couple of columns that almost exposed the CIA Mafia Nixon plots from the early '60s. And that really alarmed Richard Nixon. And we know that now because we have files, including some I've shown in the book for the first time, where the Senate Watergate Committee later found out that, Nixon was really worried when that Jack Anderson article appeared. So what did Nixon do? He had this recently retired, and I put retired in quotes where the CIA is concerned, former high CIA official by the name of E. Howard Hunt. And E. Howard Hunt had just recently been the chief of covert operations for all of Western Europe. And I don't have to tell you, Tom, in the Cold War, being chief of covert operations for all of Western Europe, I mean that's
the top of the pile.
Yeah, I mean you're not James Bond. You're James Bond's supervisor. You're the top guy. That had been E. Howard Hunt just a couple of years earlier. He was the protege of the then CIA director Richard Helms, and so E. Howard Hunt goes to work for the White House, and he gets his old buddies from the CIA Mafia plot days, including Bernard Barker, a longtime mobster from the late 40s who, and the FBI knew that, and the CIA knew that. So that's why in September of 1960, when the CIA Mafia plots were coming together, back then, E. Howard Hunt had no mob experience, so the CIA had assigned Hunt this new assistant, Bernard Barker, who was a longtime mob operative for Santo Trafficante. So Hunt got Barker and a bunch of other people from a bunch of other CIA agents and assets who had worked on various parts of the CIA Mafia plots. They became what's known as the White House plumbers. And they were formed before the Daniel Ellsberg revelations about the Pentagon Papers. One of their first jobs was to burglarize Daniel Ellsberg's psychiatrist office. Why would they do that? Well, because Daniel Ellsberg in Vietnam, back when Ellsberg was still working for the government, had been very close to the daughter of one of the last CIA supervisor for the CIA Mafia Nixon plots, because those plots had continued unknown to John and Robert Kennedy into 1963 and under the Kennedys, even though they never authorized those plots. Richard Helms, number 3 guy in the CIA back in 63, he continued those plots without telling his own CIA director. So they were worried that the daughter of that CIA official might have told Daniel Ellsberg. The CIA was also worried that, remember Salvador Allende, the head of Chile, the progressive socialist? Well, he was very close to Fidel Castro. The CIA worried that Castro might have told him something because Castro had compiled this long report.
Amazing.
Had heard about
Lamar, we'll continue after the break. Lamar Waldron with us, his new book, The Hidden History, Watergate.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
Lamar's new book, Watergate, The Hidden History, Nixon, the Mafia, and the CIA. We'll be back with Lamar Waldron right after this. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Lamar Waldron on the line with us. He's got a new book out, or newly out in paperback. It came out a little earlier in the year, titled Watergate, The Hidden History, Nixon, the Mafia, and the CIA. Lamar, welcome back.
Great to be with you, Tom.
So if you could recap the first half hour of our conversation in about 5 sentences, and then let's move forward from there, please.
Sure. The most important thing was that the current CIA spying on Congress scandal wasn't the first. There was a big one, 2 big ones in the late 1970s, where the CIA burglarized a congressional safe, was caught. They replaced their publicly fired liaison with an actual suspect the committee wanted to interrogate, but they didn't tell the committee this was the suspect they were looking for. But what the CIA was worried about from that committee and several others in the 1970s concerned Richard Nixon and his use of the Mafia, his use of the CIA to hire the Mafia to try to kill Fidel Castro before the 1960 election.
Now, this is back when Nixon was vice president.
When Nixon was vice president, he was running against Senator John F. Kennedy, and at the same time, Nixon's ties with the Mafia go back to the start of his political career. Nixon was so tied into the Mafia, he also got $1 million bribe to stall charges on Jimmy Hoffa from the same mob bosses, like Florida's Santo Traficante and Louisiana's Carlos Marcello, the same mob bosses that he was using to try to kill Fidel Castro. So
and these are the guys who ultimately also killed Jack Kennedy.
Well, those Traficante and Marcello, that same committee that the CIA burglarized their safe in the late 70s, they concluded Marcello and Traficante had the motive, means, and opportunity to have killed JFK. They concluded JFK was killed by conspiracy, but they couldn't directly finger 100% Marcello and Traficante because the CIA had withheld so much information from them.
Right.
So now we're in 1971, and Jack Anderson, the leading newspaper reporter of the time, has put out a couple of articles that almost exposed the CIA Mafia Nixon plots from 1960. In response, Nixon gets veterans of those plots, like high CIA official E. Howard Hunt, who's recently, quote, retired, end quote, from the CIA, Hunt's old Mafia assistant, Bernard Barker, a longtime CIA agent, but who worked for the Mafia, specifically Traficante, far longer, and other guys who had worked on various parts of those CIA Mafia plots. They become the White House plumbers. They first burglarized the office of Daniel Ellsberg, the Pentagon Papers guy's psychiatrist, because Ellsberg had been close to the daughter of the last CIA supervisor for the CIA Mafia Nixon plots that were continued into JFK's administration, into 1963, into the fall of 63, without telling John or Robert Kennedy. And so, but they didn't find anything at Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office. So Nixon felt confident, okay, nothing else is going to come out. Anderson wrote no more articles. So by December of 1971, we're still 7 months before the Watergate break-in, the last one, Nixon's feeling pretty confident. He wants money for his re-election next year. He would like to cut a deal with the Teamsters to get their support because, Nixon was basically an anti-union president, so most unions aren't going to support him. The Teamsters in those days could be bought. And so Nixon, in December of 71, it's just remarkable. Like any career criminal, he keeps doing what he gets away with. And he gets a brand new $1 million bribe from Santo Traficante, Carlos Marcello, and their associates, this time to release Jimmy Hoffa from prison, but with special conditions that keep Hoffa from resuming control of the Teamsters, because Hoffa was a tough guy, and the current Teamster chief in 1971, Frank Fitzsimmons, was frankly a pussycat and a pushover, and the Mafia would rather have Fitzsimmons running things than the volatile, hot-headed, tough Jimmy Hoffa. So you got a new Mafia bribe there to Richard Nixon from the same guys from 60, the same guys that had bribed him, the same guys that had supposedly tried to kill Castro for him. Let's flash ahead till May of 1972, a month before the last Watergate break-in. The CIA gets word that Castro has compiled a list, a detailed report, not just a list, a detailed report in 2 sections about all of the CIA's attempts to kill him. Now, Nixon knows those attempts started on Richard Nixon's orders. He wants to know what's in that report because he doesn't want that coming in up during the 72 election. We're in May of 72 now. The Democratic nominee has not even been chosen, and it still could be any one of several people, not just George McGovern, who eventually got it. Ted Kennedy was still in the running. Several other people were still in the running. So Nixon didn't want any of those guys to be able to put this out, and he knew that just 5 months earlier he had taken a new bribe from those same mobsters he had used on the Fidel operation. So Fidel is close to Salvador Allende, the socialist head of Chile. The Chilean embassy in Washington is burglarized by the Watergate burglars, and there's even a Watergate tape that's almost completely ignored by the media. The New York Times did an article about it in the late 90s. So there's a Watergate tape withheld from the Watergate committee, everybody, for years, in which Nixon admits he knows that the Watergate burglars had burglarized the Chilean embassy. And that's just very important because Nixon knew that. They weren't doing anything he didn't want them to do. They were doing it for him. They were doing it for the then CIA director who had continued those CIA Mafia plots without authorization into the JFK administration. They don't find the report there. So then they're worried the Democratic National Committee has it because Nixon had used an E. Howard Hunt functionary to be one of the liaisons with the Mafia and the CIA. And Hughes employed at that time the head of the Democratic National Committee, Larry O'Brien. So, Hughes knew about the plot, so there was worry, what if Hughes had somehow told Larry O'Brien, and then O'Brien...
We're talking E. Howard, we're talking the reclusive billionaire Howard Hughes?
Yeah, the reclusive billionaire Howard Hughes was part of the original CIA Mafia Nixon plots in 1960. He was a big, long-time Nixon supporter.
And he was also in tight with the mob, thus his activities in Vegas.
Right. Yeah. In other words, the key mobster in all this, Johnny Roselli, the Chicago Mafia's man in Las Vegas and Hollywood, who was close to Traficante, Johnny Roselli, from the CIA Mafia plots, he's the guy that brokered all of the deals for Howard Hughes, the billionaire, to buy these casinos from the Mafia and leave the Mafia in charge so the Mafia could keep skimming money that was rightfully Howard Hughes's. So they got to sell their casinos to Hughes, thanks to Johnny Roselli, while the mob got to keep on skimming money out that should have gone to Hughes. So they were worried. Nixon was worried that Larry O'Brien, who was a consultant for Howard Hughes, had somehow found out about these plots. So that's why the Watergate burglars made not one, not two, not three, but 4 attempts to burglarize the offices of the Democratic National Committee to see if they had a copy of that report. And it was on the 4th and final burglary attempt that they were caught and that everything hit the fan, so to speak.
Right. So what the Watergate burglars were looking for, in a nutshell, was evidence of previous crimes committed by Richard Nixon that he believed that the Democrats might have gotten their hands on.
Exactly. They might have gotten it through Hunt.
And these specific crimes that he was, the specific things that the Watergate burglars were looking for in 72 were what?
Was this report. And I put the report in the book, by the way. It came out a couple of years later, but was ignored by the
You're talking about Castro's report?
Yeah, Castro's report is actually in the book. People can see what Nixon sacrificed his presidency for. But get this, it came out finally a couple of years later. George McGovern got a copy from Fidel and released it, but it came out the day that the Mafia murdered Jimmy Hoffa, these same mobsters, by the way. And so you can tell what the headline was that day and for the next 2 weeks. That Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance, of course, murder was front page news, but we eventually did get a copy of the report, and I put the report in the book. But because here's the issue, and you remember how Nixon supporters were. Nixon supporters in 1972, they would have been upset that he had hired the Mafia to try to kill Fidel Castro back in 1960. But a lot of Nixon supporters, all of them, didn't like Castro. A lot of them would have still voted for Nixon, right?
Right.
But Nixon made his bones as the law and order president. We didn't know about all of his many felonies he was committing and selling out America to the big corporations. So even Nixon's most ardent supporters would not have liked knowing that on two occasions, in 1960 and in 1971, Nixon had gotten $1 million bribe from those same mobsters.
Right.
So Nixon
taking a bribe is far less appealing than hiring the mob to kill what's perceived as a bad political actor.
Exactly. So Nixon knew that if that report came out and if it had these mobsters in it, and he knew the Justice Department knew about the 1960 bribe because through an informant. They had learned that in 1962. Robert Kennedy had known about it, but hadn't made it public. And Nixon hoped nobody, in law enforcement knew about the 1971 $1 million bribe. But it wouldn't be hard to start putting those pieces together. And if mobsters get called in front of congressional committees, and it could be a real mess. So he had to literally risk his presidency to do that. And then we saw what happened. And so the anniversaries we're coming up on tomorrow, Tom, is the 40th anniversary of Nixon going on live primetime television. I was in Washington at the time. I think I was a teenager or not too old at the time. And I drove past the White House. There were all these demonstrators, drove back to the motel, was there with my family.
And you said,
I'm not Richard Nixon.
Hold it right there, Lamar. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's multiple Watergate anniversaries. We're talking with Lamar Waldron. His new book, Watergate: The Hidden History, Nixon, the Mafia, and the CIA. Okay, Lamar, you were saying.
Right. So in 40 years ago tomorrow, Richard Nixon went on live primetime television, and to the surprise of some, announced that he was resigning the presidency effective, I believe it was noon the next day, which would be this coming Saturday, is the 40th anniversary of him actually, leaving the White House in his helicopter and everything. But, I've got to say, it was a huge disgrace for him to have to resign the presidency, but he was able to keep all of this stuff under wraps for many, many, many years. And he should have gone to jail for his crimes. The only reason he didn't was that he was pardoned by the new president, Gerald Ford, who maintained while he was, I believe he's dead.
He is.
I think Ford maintained while he was alive he had never cut a deal to become president. Nixon's original vice president, Spiro Agnew, had been very corrupt and had to leave office because of a corruption scandal.
He was a Chris Christie type.
Exactly, the Chris Christie of his day.
Yeah.
And then he was replaced by Gerald Ford, the former Warren commissioner. And Ford said, no, look, I didn't make a deal that if you make me vice president, I'll pardon you. But, other people are very skeptical about that sort of thing. And so Nixon was able to keep all of this stuff under wraps. Plus, we have to look at this. Nixon stayed alive. Several participants in the CIA Mafia plots, Santo Trafficante, Carlos Marcello, they were godfathers. They were the top dogs. Below them in the mob hierarchy was Sam Giancana, who was never a godfather. He was a mob boss of Chicago, but he wasn't the godfather. And then people like Johnny Roselli wasn't even a mob boss. He was a mafia don. Right. So in 1975, finally, 6 months after Nixon's resignation, finally the rest of the world catches up to Jack Anderson, and they start talking about these CIA Mafia plots because, oddly enough, Gerald Ford leaked something to a reporter or blurted out something. So there's a new Senate committee, the Senate Church Committee. Now the CIA immediately starts stonewalling and lying to the Senate Church Committee. But the Church Committee, they've got some names. They've got some names like Jimmy Hoffa. They've got who by the way was an early part of the CIA Mafia plots. In addition to that bribe, they've got Sam Giancana's name. They've got Johnny Roselli's name. So Senator Frank Church, who has presidential aspirations himself, heads this committee. Gary Hart is on it, and they start wanting to call witnesses. So they're ready to call Sam Giancana as a witness. Well, before Sam Giancana can go to Washington to testify, he is one of the first Senate witnesses, prospective witnesses, ever murdered in cold blood, a killing unsolved to this day. The Church's committee has also been getting some information under the table from Jimmy Hoffa, who does not like those conditions that Richard Nixon put on him that said, as part of the bribe deal, that he can't run the Teamsters again. So in revenge, he's leaking information to, he leaked some to the Senate-Watergate Committee, but also the Church Committee. So before Jimmy Hoffa can be called as a witness, about 6 or 7 weeks after Sam Giancana, Jimmy Hoffa is murdered. Now, the Senate Church Committee is stonewalled hugely by the CIA. The Church Committee does get to interview Johnny Roselli several times. Each time Roselli, has to reveal more and more. He wasn't a citizen. He supported.
Just hold it right there. Hang on right there, Lamar. We'll be right back. We're talking with Lamar Waldron, the book Watergate, The Hidden History. Welcome back. We're talking with Lamar Waldron, the author of Watergate, The Hidden History, Nixon, the Mafia, and the CIA. And we're in the story up to 1975. The Church Committee, Frank Church and Gary Hart and a bunch of other guys looking into Nixon's potential crimes. And they subpoena Sam Giancana, and he gets whacked, and they subpoena Jimmy Hoffa, and he gets whacked, and now they're going to subpoena. Now they're talking to Johnny Roselli, right?
Right, and they had not actually subpoenaed Jimmy Hoffa yet because he's kind of passing information to the Church Committee under the table.
Right.
But somebody found out about that, so
okay.
they stopped that. And and by the way, the guy who's connected to both of those murders and the one I'm about to tell you about is Santo Trafficante, but Carlos Marcello and some of the other mob bosses would, of course, all have signed off on these things.
Right.
So Johnny Roselli has to testify several times, and each time he has to reveal more and more. And of course, these are the same guys. Trafficante and Marcello later admitted their involvement in JFK's murder. Johnny Roselli would later admit his role in JFK's murder. So that's the big crime these guys are trying. That's why these murders are happening, not just to hide the CIA Mafia plots and the bribes. Big deal to the Mafia.
They're trying to hide the fact that they killed Jack Kennedy.
Right, that some of these same mobsters killed Jack Kennedy.
So is this when Johnny Roselli turns up in body parts in a 55-gallon drum floating in the bay?
Shortly, just a few weeks after he has literally his last meal with Santo Trafficante, down in South Florida, he shows up in a 55-gallon oil drum, dismembered, cut apart, and that's just such a huge thing. Now, the CIA has already torpedoed Frank Church's Senate Intelligence Committee investigation. They did a huge media PR effort. They stonewalled. They did not give all the files they were supposed to. They hid a lot of the information. So Church's committee is kind of moribund at that point. Howard, I believe it was Howard Baker, not Howard Baker, Schweiker. Senator Schweiker was continuing the investigation on his own. That's what they didn't want Roselli talking more to Senator Schweiker. So a new committee was formed in the wake of Johnny Roselli's, sensational murder. And that was the House Select Committee on Assassinations that the CIA continued to lie to in Stonewall and burglarize their safe.
So where was Herbert Hoover in all this?
Do what?
Where was Herbert Hoover in all this? Not Herbert Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover, excuse me.
Well, one reason everything went to heck so much, J. Edgar Hoover died in May of 1972. People should realize he died suddenly, literally, I believe it was the day after Jack Anderson, the same big columnist, the Watergate, Woodward and Bernstein before Woodward and Bernstein. Jack Anderson ran a column saying he had learned about all the crimes of J. Edgar Hoover and was getting ready to expose those. So, I'm sure that was a lot of stress on J. Edgar Hoover, who'd been breaking the law for years. Some people have speculated he committed suicide, but so he died before the first Watergate burglary. So he's out of the picture. His new replacement, L. Patrick Gray, is a functionary for Richard Nixon. The guy who should have become CIA director was Mark Felt. Mark Felt is angry at not becoming, FBI director.
And he's the guy we now know of as Deep Throat.
Starts leaking to Woodward, but he doesn't tell Woodward all the stuff about the Mafia ties of Watergate burglar Frank Sturgis, real name Frank Fiorini, the Watergate ties of Bernard Barker, the mob ties of most of the Watergate burglars. So he hides that. Here's something your listeners have never heard because I just found this out recently. The Senate Watergate Committee, they actually interviewed Johnny Roselli in secret. You won't find this in the Watergate reports or in all the President's Men or in the follow-up Woodward and Bernstein book, but The Final Days. But the Senate Watergate Committee interviewed Johnny Roselli in secret, learned about the CIA Mafia plots, learned that was what Nixon was so worried about. And one of the very investigators who interviewed Johnny Roselli for the Senate Watergate Committee soon went to work for Bob Woodward on The Final Days. And so I asked him recently, I said, well, what did Woodward say when you told him about Johnny Roselli and all the mob stuff? Because there's no mob stuff in All the President's Men or in The Final Days. And he said, it really did not come up. We were busy on other stuff. Nixon had resigned. There were all these other crimes. He said it didn't come up until Johnny Roselli was found in that oil drum. By that time, that was in 1976. That was so far beyond those books, Woodward had moved on to other subjects. So that's why you will not find the Mafia and Johnny Roselli in any of the conventional Watergate texts, but with thanks to the Library of Congress, thanks to the National Archive, thanks to Hoffa expert Dan Moldea, I was able to get the actual interview notes of Johnny Roselli by the Senate Watergate Committee, and they had all this great material. So that stuff is all in Watergate: The Hidden History for the first time. But what your listeners should know is, there's a million files related to Watergate, Nixon, the Mafia, and the JFK assassination. The CIA is still withholding a million pages of files. There's a law passed in 1992 unanimously by Congress to release all the JFK assassination records. That created the JFK Assassination Records Review Board. The CIA lied to that review board. They withheld information from that review board. I was able to tell some board investigators stuff the CIA was hiding, and they got some of that, but not all of it. So it's just ridiculous. The CIA keeps getting away with hiding and stonewalling Congress and burglarizing, their, breaking in on their computers and safes. It's time people did something. There's going to be a big effort in late September. There's going to be a conference in Washington. I believe it's the last weekend, 50th anniversary of the Warren Report. The CIA, of course, withheld stuff from the Warren Commission. And that's really going to be the last chance. So if people, I believe there's a link on your website. If they go to my Facebook Hidden History site, which I think there's a link on your website, then in the coming weeks, I'll have more information about that. Congress will start a new White House petition. People should contact the members of Congress.
Amazing stuff. Hey, Lamar, we got to wrap it up. Lamar Waldron, a JFK historian, author, Watergate: The Hidden History, Nixon, the Mafia, and the CIA. You can find it over on Facebook. Look for Hidden History. Thank you, Lamar.
Thank you, Tom. You're great as always.
And back at you.